Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So the setup is a little bit different here. I think I did a video, an update video on what's currently going on in my life, in the house, all of that. And so things have been moved around. So my videos might look different, the next few videos that you see. Because things are a bit shifted around, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys a heads up. I don't know what this looks like because I can't really see, you know, my setup. I had my setup sort of more or less established before. So if this is kind of like off center or kind of sideways, I'll work on that. But anyways, I have a couple of I don't want to even say book recommendations or book reviews. I kind of just tell you guys what I think about certain books and maybe save you the trouble of reading them because I kind of wish somebody would have done that for me, especially with the books that I'm going to review or that I'm going to talk about in the next few videos. So this one is called The Myth of Normal. It is by Dr. Gabor Mate. If that name sounds familiar to you guys, it's because he's kind of, I don't want to say he's like famous or something, but he sort of brought himself to the forefront with some books that he's written talking about like the whole mind body connection type of thing. But he also recently did an interview with Prince Harry. Many of you may have heard about that because right now Prince Harry, of course, is like in the news and all of that. Lots of controversy with him. But he did this interview that you had to pay to watch. I didn't watch it. I didn't pay. I wasn't going to pay to watch that. But he's also well known for his book called When the Body Says No. And he also did an interview on Mayim Bialik's podcast, which is called, I forget what it's called. But if you guys don't know who Mayim Bialik is, she's from The Big Bang Theory. And also, if you're my age, she's from Blossom. if you know that show, so he's kind of coming to the forefront of psychology and the whole mind body connection, how illness is sort of connected to child abuse or neglect or stressors from childhood and even from infancy before you even can remember certain things. Now I have a lot of opinions about this man, but I kind of want to focus on this specific book. I did read his other book as well, but I want to talk about this one. This is his latest book. It's called The Myth of Normal. And the reason that I actually bought the book thinking that I had read half of it and I liked, or it was like I was almost halfway through and I kind of liked what I was reading, and then I bought the book and then read the rest of it and I was like, this might not be exactly what I thought it was going to be. I was kind of, I guess, trying to find a shortcut so I wouldn't have to read his other book, which is When the Body Says No. My psychologist actually recommended that to me. I, like many other people with chronic illness, really do have an issue with this whole mind-body thing because it almost insinuates that you caused your own illness or that your illness may be psychological, which is not what it's not behind what he's talking about, but it can be easily misconstrued that way. So I was really resisting reading that book. When I saw that he came out with this book, which is gigantic, it's like the size, I should have actually brought it up here. It looks like a Bible. I was like, you know what, I'll just read that and maybe I could skip having to read whatever else he's written. But really, I kind of feel like I should have started with the other book because the other book is more specific to, physical illness and that kind of thing. So it is a long book. It has a very broad focus. It talks about everything, even, society and how society is creating sort of this, this culture that can promote illness, promote or provoke illness in people. So it does take a very, very broad approach. It can also be a little bit political. So if you have, and I know right now things are very, very politically divided, at least here in the United States. And he does almost take a sort of, I don't want to say political, but it is, a lot of what he talks about in the book can be associated with left or far left types of philosophies. Um, I'm not saying that it's not true what he's saying, but I know a lot of people are going to, that have certain political leanings may start reading it and then go, oh no, this is nonsense because it doesn't align with their, I guess, political views. Um, if, I just, like I said, it's a big book and it has um, a very broad focus. He does break it down pretty good though, into sections. I think there's like 5 sections with different chapters. So for me, you can actually just, if you do get the book, you can just read whatever it is that you want to read. Because I did see kind of a disconnect. He talks about some things in the beginning, and then the whole like middle of the book is like, you know, what does he call it? Neuropsychosocial dynamics or whatever. And then you get to the end and it goes back to sort of like physical illness and trauma and that kind of thing. So you could actually select which sections to read. I think for me, sections 1, 2, and then 5 were probably the ones that were most relevant. But of course, they are long sections because they have chapters within the sections, and it's a huge book. So 1, 2, and 5, I guess, would pertain the most to physical illness and trauma and anything that's sort of connected to that. But I mean, the book is actually good because he does talk about sort of, how, I guess, we're conditioned to work a lot, especially in this country, and how that can have detrimental effects on your body, our healthcare system, all of those types of things, and how those can contribute to illness, or how it makes it very difficult to recover or to get the help that you need. So it does, I actually don't even remember all the stuff that was in the book because it was that big and it just had so much stuff in it that, I just really, I did put a lot of little sticky notes in it, where I thought things were relevant or relevant to me or relevant to my situation. But if you're not that kind of person that likes to go digging for whatever information you need, this book may not be the one for you. He does share like real world examples, anecdotes, and stories of people, people that are suffering from illness, and then kind of they go back in time and talk about like the trauma or the child abuse or whatever that they suffered, and how that, kind of led them to that, to their illness and their adult lives and all the issues that they have. It does feel like a bit of a scattered book because, like I said, he kind of starts off with that, with, the whole mind body thing. And then in the middle, it just kind of gets like political or socio-political type of vibe for like a long time. Like he'll even mention stories or people at the beginning and he'll be like, oh, we'll get to this like in part 4 or part 5. We'll get back to this person's story. So you read through the whole thing. And then at the end, it's like, okay, we're getting back to this person's story and how they got to this point in their lives where they're like very sick or terminally ill or whatever. Um, you know, so the focus is not solely on illness, even though he does give some good examples. I think if you want to just focus mostly on illness and trauma and how that, contributes to illness, I would probably just read When the Body Says No. And I'll talk about that book in another video. Because that one does have that. And I mean, obviously, just looking at the titles and, When the Body Says No is kind of what made him, I don't want to say famous, but what he's well known for. And that one does talk about trauma and the connection to illness and all of that. So, I mean, obviously, I should have probably just read that book. He does talk about psychedelics. I know that that was a really big controversy with his interview with Prince Harry, because they talked about psychedelics and how that can help and all of that. And yes, psychedelics are being researched, in the treatment of illnesses and stuff like that. But, um, there really wasn't anything, he talks about how it brought him to, like, I guess, a greater awareness. But I think when it comes to psychedelics and drugs, it can make you feel like you are becoming aware or whatever. It doesn't mean that you are becoming aware. It creates a sensation in your body, and in your brain, that may make you feel like you're experiencing something that you really aren't. So, he does tend to get a little bit woo woo, in my opinion. And, that's where I kind of take issue. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Um, he does admit that because he also has his own issues. I don't know if he's a Holocaust survivor himself. His mother and I think his grandparents or something, his grandparents or someone were killed in the Holocaust. His mother escaped and had to give him up to someone temporarily as a baby, in order to save his life and to save her own life. And then they reunited a little bit later. But he does talk about how that really affected him, and that's, I think, where his theory came from, that even traumas in your infancy that you don't even remember can still affect you somewhere down the line, all the way into adulthood. So he does have this sort of chip on his shoulder, and he does talk about how he does enjoy the attention and the prestige that his work and his writing has brought to him. So I would approach his writings with caution, because even he's aware on that level that he likes the attention, which may be why he decided to do this thing with Prince Harry, because Prince Harry is really big right now, the controversy with him and his wife. And to me, it sort of questions his credibility, because once you start to like that attention, and I've told you guys before, I have a doctor that was on Dr. Phil, and that does make me question, any doctor that has been on TV, whether it's Dr. Drew or any other doctor. I always question their motives and question whether they are even competent practitioners, because that attention seeking or prestige seeking is not good when it comes to a practitioner. And it can even cloud their judgment. But I haven't seen the interview with Prince Harry, so I can't really talk about that. So, he does have his own trauma. He is giving a lot of pop psychology vibes, especially because of this Prince Harry thing. He was on Mayim Bialik's podcast. That was actually a pretty good interview. I would probably recommend looking. It's called, geez Louise, what is it called? I like it because you can just listen to it, or you can watch it on YouTube. It is called Breakdown with Mayim Bialik. And there is an episode with Gabor Mate, and he talks about his work, and she asks him a lot of questions because she read his book, The Myth of Normal. So I would probably just listen to that instead of reading The Myth of Normal. It's just such a big book. And here's my thing with this man. And really with a lot of books, a lot of psychology books or whatever, they are good at describing the problem. They are bad at giving you solutions to it. And really, I can't recall, even in the other book, When the Body Says No, I can't recall that he, besides talking about psychedelics, I can't recall that he specifically says, like, here are things that you can do, right? Here are things that you can do to offset this trauma, or here are things. There are some books that will talk about therapy modalities, and you'll see that in my other videos where I talk about other books that I've read. But as far as providing a solution, obviously he talks about things that can be done, like maybe teaching kids sort of like emotional awareness in school and things like that. But as far as telling people, here are some things that you can do to help you cope with this trauma. Besides going to a counselor, things that you can discuss even with your therapist, to help you deal and to help you sort of come to a healthier you. One of the things that he did say, and I can't remember if it was in this book or in The Body Says No, I'll probably bring it up again in that video, is he talks about healing. And he does, all of us, anybody that is chronically ill, we have all heard about people that have spontaneously gone into remission. Just somehow they came to a greater awareness of themselves, and they, became cancer free, or their illness, their rheumatoid arthritis disappeared. And he does talk about that. And it's a little bit misleading because he talks about healing. He brings up those cases, and then he goes, but that's not always what healing means to people, right? That's not always healing. Sometimes healing can just be making peace with, the person that abused you, or the traumatic accident that you had, and then he describes a woman that like made peace with it and then still died from her illness. And it's kind of like, for those of us who are chronically ill, for those of us who are sick, those stories are not, it's not like, how can I say it? It's not helping, right? And I remember this quote from a movie, from the movie As Good as It Gets, where, I forget who says it, but the character in the movie says, "I'm drowning and you're describing the water." And this is exactly what Gabor Mate is doing. That's what he does in his books. People are drowning. They go and read his books thinking that they're going to find some kind of help. And all he does is describe the water and describe the waves and how horrible they are and how big they are. And that's what it feels like he's doing, because I came away from his books almost with this feeling of hopelessness. Like, yes, he's very good at getting down to the science of stuff, but not very good at actually providing a well thought out solution, or even telling people, here are things that you can do to help yourself, right? And for those of us who are sick, I think that's what we're looking for. And I think a lot of people that read his books, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for some type of help to get them to where they want to be, not just mentally, but physically. Because remember, this guy is talking about the mind-body connection, how trauma can trigger physical illness and make you sick later on in your life. So, and the reason I have a problem with these theories is because, a diabetic person goes to the doctor, they get insulin, and that, I'm not saying that it cures their illness, but it helps them. It prolongs their life. It improves their quality of life and gets them, they can lead a normal life. And it's the same with some autoimmune illnesses. You are diagnosed, the doctor puts you on, whether it's steroids or IVIG or whatever, your quality of life improves and you're able to live more or less a normal life in some cases, right? And here's somebody that is presenting this theory that trauma can lead to illness. And he really digs into this theory a lot, by the way. That trauma and whatever can cause illness, but there's really no way back. That's kind of the vibe that I get, that there's no way back. Once you have that trauma, you can make peace with it and die peacefully, but there's like very little that you can do to actually reverse that, right? Because he's talking about the root. He's talking about the root of the problem. You know the root of the problem. So what is the solution? It's like, when my doctor tells me you have a lot of inflammation, we need to get to the root of the problem. Okay, well, what's the root of the problem is inflammation. How do we combat inflammation? Right? You do that with changing your diet, maybe IVIG or some other type of medication that can help reduce inflammation, maybe meditation, things like that, right? that's, I think, what people are looking to his writing and his work for, is for a solution, for a way to sort of reverse that. And he's really not giving much. It's almost like this roundabout, like, oh, and you can heal, but can you really heal? But it, he even says stuff like that, like path to healing, but is it, can you actually heal? It's like, well, can you? You're the expert on this, right? So it's a little bit annoying the way that he kind of presents his ideas, and then it's just kind of roundabout, gives you another story of another person, and it's just really annoying. But this video is already kind of long. It will continue when I do the video for When the Body Says No. It's going to be a lot of the same, but more specific to that mind body. So if you have to choose between the myth of normal and When the Body Says No, I would just go When the Body Says No. If you're interested in chronic illness and trauma and whatever, and how that leads to illness. Because this book was very broad. If you're interested in more of the social aspect and how society is contributing to dysfunction and illness, then yeah, the myth of normal would probably be the way to go. If you want to sort of consolidate it, you want to know some of the stuff that he has in his other book, When the Body Says No, but you also want to know the social implications, then read The Myth of Normal, because that one will cover all of that. And it is interesting, and nothing that he says is a lie. It is true what he is saying in the book. But I know that a lot of us here, a lot of you that watch my channel, we're looking kind of for a solution or for some help, for actual help, actual things that are going to ease our suffering and maybe help with our symptoms. Not cure it, but at least help. And he sort of, I feel like he kind of presents his stuff that way. The stuff that he writes and the research that he's done, he presents it in a way like, oh, this is going to help. And it's like, no, you're just describing the problem without actually telling us what to do about it. So that's what I have to say about The Myth of Normal. I'll come back. I'll talk about When the Body Says No. And then I have another book as well. All of them are in that sort of mind-body realm. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.